When Muhammad was corrected by Allah. Muslims often bring up the fact that Muhammad was corrected by Allah on several occasions. They ask, how could this be? If his God is actually correcting him and criticizing him, surely he couldn't have made it up. I wanted to go through the incident where Allah corrected Muhammad to see what the real consequences were for Muhammad. Did he suffer any actual consequences? What were his motivations if he were making this up? Let's be clear, we can never know for sure what was going on in Muhammad's head. Trying to grasp the motivations of a dead man is nearly impossible. We can merely guess. But by going through these examples, you're going to notice something. You're going to notice that making Muhammad the fall guy is a genius strategy because it lets Allah off the hook for any blunders that happen due to his incompetence and makes Muhammad look all the more believable. So what are the possibilities? A. Allah really did correct Muhammad. In these cases, Allah allowed Muhammad to mess up and then corrected him. This is unfalsifiable because you could just argue Allah wanted him to learn a lesson. We'll never know what's in Allah's head, even more than Muhammad's. Option B. Muhammad felt guilty about making mistakes. He made mistakes and felt pressure from those around him. The blunder was obvious. If he didn't come up with a good solution, people would start thinking maybe Allah wasn't talking to him. This would be the best way to save his skin, by letting Allah correct him. This is a win-win situation because it makes Muhammad seem more credible, and it's also a get out of jail card because it would never be Allah's fault, but it would be his fault, and he's just a human. Therefore, he becomes a great prophet, very clever. Not only that, nobody else actually knows what Allah said to Muhammad. If Allah says something to Muhammad, how would we know unless Muhammad told us? Muhammad's in a very special place that only he knows what Allah said. I guess we'll just have to take his word on it. Remember, Muhammad didn't have to think about all this ahead of time. All he has to do is adjust his strategy as he goes based on how people around him react. That's what most good cult leaders do. Number 1. The most famous example is Surah Abasa. This is the golden example of Allah correcting Muhammad according to Sunni interpretation. Muhammad was preaching to the Makkans when a blind man came and asked for his time. Muhammad frowned and turned away. Well, the Makkans ended up ignoring him and ignoring his pleas as well. Now, in this case, if Muhammad was successful in convincing the Makkans to listen to him, do you think Allah would have complained about the blind man? It was really irrelevant to the big picture. Of course not. But Muhammad failed, and he probably felt bad about it. Maybe even people started whispering, look, he spent all of his effort on those guys who have money and power, and he ignored the sincere man that came to him. This is really bad PR for Muhammad. Lo and behold, Allah comes to the rescue. Really, I think this one incident is enough, because if you ask Muslims, this is probably the only example they know. The other examples are not so well known, but let's look at a couple more. Number 2, after the Battle of Badr, they had a choice. They had a bunch of captives of war, and they could either kill them or ransom them for money. Muhammad decided on the ransom money, as per his friend Abu Bakr's advice, not his friend Omar's advice to kill them. After he did so, guess what? The Makkans decided to retaliate and fight back. They came back with a vengeance at Uhud, and they actually won that battle. Did Muhammad realize this after the fact? That he made a big mistake out of his desire for wealth? Allah corrected him. It is not for a prophet to have captives of war until he inflicts a massacre in the land. Some Muslims desire the commodities of this world, but Allah desires for you the hereafter, and Allah is exalted in might and wise. Is Allah saying Muhammad desired money here when he says some people? This is one of those situations where if you say, why did Allah allow him to make a mistake? You'll get, well, it was a test, it was a lesson to be learned. When Muhammad plays good cop, bad cop, he can't lose. Then, number 3, there's the Zayd incident. Muhammad wanted to marry Zainab, but he was worried about what people would think. What he wanted to do was completely taboo in the society, and he would be looked at as a dirty old man for marrying his adopted son's ex-wife. So Allah criticized him for not marrying his daughter-in-law because of course, you shouldn't be scared of what people think. You should be scared of what Allah thinks. And Muslims have to know this important lesson that you can actually marry your adopted son's ex-wife. So important, isn't it? So this example doesn't even count because Muhammad got what he wanted and he used Allah to justify it. Number 4, a threat from Allah. And if Muhammad had made up about us some false sayings, we would have seized him by the right hand. Then we would have cut from him the aorta. And there is no one of you who could prevent us from him. Chapter 69, verses 44 to 47. This is an interesting one. I was surprised that this actually convinces people. If I met someone who claimed to talk to God and nobody else can verify this, and then he claims, oh, I'm truthful because God would strike me down if I lied. Look, that's what God said. This wouldn't convince me. Would it convince you? I mean, the Makkans kept getting told, Allah's going to wipe you out like he did the previous nations of Ad and Thamud. And they challenged him back saying, oh yeah, well, bring about the destruction then. We're waiting. Bring it. Of course, the destruction of Allah never came. So why would this convince anybody? Why would this even convince believers? A clever salesman always points out some flaws in his products. That gives you trust. And it's so easy for him to criticize himself on these minor petty things. Costed him nothing at all. If we've never seen Allah strike anyone down, why would we suddenly think he's going to do so now? That's like me saying, if I'm a liar, may Allah strike me down. I didn't get struck down. Does that mean I'm telling the truth now? Do you really believe that? Is that convincing to you as a Muslim? Do you really think Muhammad was a true prophet? He really spoke to God just because of these few small examples of Allah criticizing him? Well, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, please help me to make more videos. I have 36 monthly supporters, and if you think I'm making an impact, be one of the first 100 to support me. I definitely appreciate the one-time donations, but monthly support, even if a smaller amount, is more reliable and consistent for me to continue this daily work. Your support counts. Thank you to all of the early investors who provided the much needed support early on when I had none. I love you guys. This is Abdullah Samir signing out.